A number of families in our church have served as foster families through the years, and some of those foster families have actually ended up adopting the children they were fostering and made them legally and in every way fully a part of their family. I had the privilege of attending one of those legal proceedings at the Barnstable County Courthouse as a family in our church legally adopted their son. And it was a very special moment filled with love and smiles all around, and the judge sharing that compared to some of the difficult and ugly situations that he had to preside over so often, how wonderful it was to preside over an occasion filled with love and joy all around. And that was over the loving adoption of one child. I share that with you to put our verses for today in a little bit of emotional and social context. In Ephesians chapter 1, writing about God's plan and destiny for humanity, Paul writes in verses 5 and 6 that God destined us for adoption as his children through Jesus Christ, according to the good pleasure of his will, to the praise of his glorious grace that he freely bestowed on us in the beloved. We know in the biblical story that if you start at the beginning, that if you will, God's children began with Adam and Eve, and that the hope was that there would be this ongoing wonderful relationship between God and humanity. And unfortunately, that didn't happen, and Cain ended up killing his brother Abel, and that's symbolic of the violence of brother against brother, of human beings against human beings from the very beginning. And so then later in Genesis chapter 12, in a sense, God starts over with Abram and Sarah, and he says he's going to create a new humanity through them. Through them, all the nations of the world will be blessed. And then we jump forward again in the scriptures, and through David, God establishes a kingship, a messianic line. Well, Adam and Eve were supposed to bring salvation. Through Abram and Sarah, there's blessing. Through David's line, there's kingship. All those things come to fruition in Jesus Christ. And God destines us for adoption now, not just the Jewish people, the descendants of Abram and Sarah, but that all people, God wants to adopt all of us to be a part of God's new family, that God wants to have an incredibly large family made up of Jews and Gentiles, of people from every nation and language and tongue. If you ever feel unwanted, if you ever feel unloved, if you ever feel like, do I have any value? Does anyone care? Does anyone even notice that I'm here? Know that God loved you so much that God wants to adopt you and for you to be a part of God's loving family. And that is part of the grace that God has freely bestowed on you and me and every human being who will respond to God's gracious offer of love in Jesus, and to be a part of God's family that knows no boundary.